just online, but in person as well. And definitely the ability to delegate and really realize your shortcomings. That being one of mine, I had to realize that, I can't deal with these customers in person. I need
Mhm.
a manager to step in and give an unbiased, unemotional response. And, I tried to work on it. I talked to my therapist about it, and it was too difficult. I
Mhm.
cared too much about my business. So I had to realize that, and I had to take a step back, and I had to delegate that. So again, the ability to kind of do that internal soul searching and step away when you need to is definitely something that I always, tell people has to be a quality.
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing is just always willing to learn, willing to be humble, willing to
Mhm.
realize that you don't know it all.
Mhm.
It's really critical to learn from people who went before you because every business is so nuanced. So
Mhm.
anytime somebody reaches out to me, via Instagram or via email, and they seem so super smug, like I did when I first started, I say, immediately the first thing I'm going to tell you is you need to eat, a large slice of humble pie because really any industry, but this one especially will humble you so quickly. So I like to tell people that just going into it, just be open-minded, be willing to learn. Even if you envision your business one specific way, always be willing to pivot and don't stand so firmly on something that you're not willing to recognize that it's not working
Mhm.
because those are the businesses that I see fail when the owner isn't willing to change, isn't willing to listen, isn't willing to adapt. Those are the businesses that typically close. So,
Yeah.
willing to learn, willing to recognize your shortcomings, and having thick skin are probably the biggest qualities I always tell people to look for in themselves if they're considering this.
Yeah. I think these things can apply to so many different jobs and
Absolutely.
careers and just really any goals that you're trying to go after. And I think another level of like not complication, but something you had to overcome is I just assume that not many people in your life were doing anything like what you're doing. Especially like working online. I know as like a freelancer, nobody really understands the whole online space or doing anything like that. So how did you how do you cope with that? And do you like need the people around you to understand, or do you just like feel like you can just do it on your own and you don't really have to depend on anybody in person, if that makes sense?
Well, it's so funny because when I had my brick and mortar business, everyone understood it so easily, right?
Right. Right.
There's a business, there's a storefront, there's a website.
Mhm.
It's very my parents understood what I did. So if I
Right.
ever needed help, if I said, "Hey, can you babysit?" They'd be like, "Absolutely. You have to go run your
Mhm.
business."
Mhm.
Now it's completely different and they don't understand what I do. And I know for a fact when my mom, meets up with her friends or meets up with people or goes to her she went to her high school reunion recently. And I'm a stay-at-home mom now. I had a business,
Mhm.
sold it, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. And it's just because she really just can't grasp that, online businesses are legitimate. And I think because neither of my parents were entrepreneurs, I think that's where a lot of my mindset came from that,
Mhm.
in order to be a legitimate business owner, you have to have a storefront. So I
Mhm.
struggle with that all the time because now when I need a babysitter, it's like, do you really like, don't
Yeah.
you just, make silly little YouTube videos all day? Don't you, isn't this just a hobby or something like that? Meanwhile, I'm making way more money than I ever made in my brick and mortar business.
Right.
And I believe I'm making more of an impact and helping people every day. It's really difficult to kind of help people understand a business
Mhm.
that doesn't have that storefront, especially if they're, in the older generation. So we have definitely had to lean on some outside sources for help. We've had to hire more babysitters, more childcare, which is difficult. But again, I just kind of had to give up on, my parents understanding what I do. It's just
Mhm.
never going to happen. So that
Mhm.
does make it a little bit more difficult when people don't view your business as legitimate or
Mhm.
your, income as legitimate or something like that. So it has made it a little bit more difficult. But again, we're very lucky in that my husband still works full time. He's also an entrepreneur, so he gets it. So
Mhm.
he's very receptive whenever I say, "Hey, I have a, podcast interview scheduled," or, "Hey, I have to record this thing," or "Hey, I have to do this." I'm very lucky that he's also an entrepreneur. So he really gets it, even if
Mhm.
nobody else does.
Mhm.
And he views my business as legitimate. So we kind of help each other and lean on each other when one of us needs silence or needs to do something important. So again, it kind of comes back to that internal circle and having that support from him. It's so helpful. And I could not do what I do without having that support. Again, even if it's just him, it really
Mhm.
makes a huge difference. So I really feel for the entrepreneurs out there who don't have a spouse that understands,
Yeah.
or, that I can't imagine having to, operate a business without any support system. So I think,
Mhm.
that would be really difficult. I'm super lucky though that I'm not in that situation.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. My husband tries to understand. He's not an entrepreneur, but he does his best to understand. And it's hard to explain because like I'm doing this podcast and it's just starting, so it's not like I'm making money right now. So it's just like the mindset really is different, because I'm not clocking in and like I'm new and I'm making money. It's more like an entrepreneurial mindset of it. It's the goals that you have and
Right.
where you're planning to go with it. So, yeah, it is hard to not have people like directly in my life who fully understand or have the same mindset. But, people that support you and people that I've met online and things are definitely helpful. When it
Yeah,
comes to
finding a
like,
community and
oh,
like-minded
yeah.
people is so important. And
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons that I started my membership for place-based owners, because a lot of them are in that same situation. They
Mhm.
either have an unsupportive spouse or, I don't like to use the word really unsupportive, but someone who
Mhm.
just doesn't get it, right?
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't get all the day-to-day things.
Mhm.
Or maybe they don't have, a supportive family, or maybe they don't live close to family. So that's one of the main reasons I started my online membership, is because so many people find themselves in that scenario. And just having each other, I think there's around 300 owners in the membership right now. Just being able to even just vent sometimes to people who truly get it, I
Mhm.
think makes all the difference when it comes
Mhm.
to just getting through the day to day. And it's so helpful to get, I will say, unbiased opinions from your peers, from people who are in the same position as you.
Right.
And I think that's so helpful. And like I said, a lot of people don't get that at home, or they just can't get it from
Mhm.
their families. So I think finding like-minded people and community is so important for any entrepreneur or parent.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And that's something that I think holds a lot of people back as well with any type of business, or just starting anything new, like going back to school, starting a new business, or starting a new job, going for a job that might be a little higher than what people expect you to be able to, you know, be able to do. It's like we care what people think or if people get it, and you don't have to get it. Like other people don't have to get it. And that's just a topic that keeps coming up with really anybody. Like we're talking right now about a brick and mortar business turned online business, and something that a lot of people maybe don't fully grasp, but something that we all experience is having to push through those things of what do people think, or is this something I can do, the imposter syndrome and overwhelm and burnout and stuff. And we can all really, I think, resonate with that. And I think another point to make is just the fact that, and I'm just assuming a lot of people listening don't really know much about play cafes and what you do, just the thought that 300 people are in your membership, that's a lot. And that's a lot of people doing that. So there's so many people in the world, and you will find your people that understand, and you'll find those people. Like, if you want to do something, there's a space for you. And even if you feel like it's the opposite way, like oversaturated, I think there's always a space for you because it's you, it's not your business, it's you that you're doing. So those are all like really important things that come up with really anybody, no matter what, business you have or career path or whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started, making YouTube videos, because that's how it started. I always knew that I wanted to do an online course just because I was researching about it and I knew that I had a lot to offer, but I put it off for way too long because, who was I to teach other people to do what
Right.
I do? I knew that there were other play cafes or indoor playgrounds out there that were making more money, that were more successful, that were
Mhm.
bigger, that had more locations. So for so long, I worried about what my peers would think if I started
Mhm.
making YouTube videos.
Mhm.
I started worrying, are they going to call me out that I'm not the most successful, that I'm not the
Yeah.
biggest, that we haven't been around the longest. And I really just had to get over that.
Mhm.
And I had to realize that, even if I'm not the biggest and the best or most profitable, I've experienced so much and I've learned so much. And I know that the people who are thinking about starting this journey can learn. Even if I've made a million mistakes, if I share those million mistakes, that's a million mistakes somebody else doesn't have to make. That's months
Absolutely.
and months or even years of struggle that I can prevent someone from having to go through like I did. So,
Mhm.
it took a while, and I had the idea for my course probably a year before I actually put it out into the world, just because I had that negative self-talk. I was really concerned more about what my peers would think than about the
Mhm.
people who I could potentially help. So the
Right.
advice that I always give to people who are just starting out is, don't think about what other people in your industry would think or what your friends
Mhm.
and family would think. Think about the people who you can help and how you can improve their lives and the impact that you can make, and kind of always keeping that front of mind, because sometimes I still get nervous to like hit publish.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
still don't post as much as I should. I post on Instagram like once a month. And a lot
Mhm.
of it is because I know people in my real life follow me, and I
Mhm.
get self-conscious about it. And it's something
Mhm.
that you don't just get over one day. You don't just,
Mhm.
get cured from imposter
Mhm.
syndrome. It's something that I constantly have to, kind of push to the bottom. But once I just started getting over it and saying, you know what, I don't care what other people think, I know I can help people, that's when I really started to find those people that I was meant to serve, and I started making money from it. So
Mhm.
now I really don't care. And sure, I'm sure some of my peers had, not nice things to say about me, but I don't care because I'm helping people. And when I get to travel to see my students and visit their spaces and see the impact that it's made on their lives and on their families, it makes it all worth it. And it completely makes me forget about all that. So,
Yeah. And even if you're listening to this and you kind of feel like, okay, I am embarrassed of other people, but the thing I want to do isn't really helping anybody. I mean, I think a lot of people don't give themselves credit. No matter what you're doing, you're probably helping people. But I think just the basics, like going after what you're meant to do and doing something you love is going to help everybody. Like the world would be a better place if we all did the things that we really wanted to do, things that lit us up, things that made us feel good and put that positive energy out there. So I think even if you're like, well, I'm not going to do open this cafe to help parents and kids, like that's awesome. Anything that you do that's following your dream or following your what you want to do is definitely worth it. And it is really hard, especially the people that you know personally. I hate that, but it's like I'm more embarrassed around people that I like am close with almost. I don't know why that is, but just pushing past that is so important and having like the confidence. Do you like have any direct recommendation or not recommendations, advice for anybody who's like I really want to do this. Like I'm one step away. And the one thing that's stopping them is just what people are going to say. What would you tell somebody?
so I've never gotten a mean comment or a rude remark from someone that's doing better than me,
Yeah.
ever. It's
Yeah.
always the people who are struggling themselves or struggling internally, and they're projecting. So once I realized that, even if somebody doesn't comment something, but if they're thinking something negative in their head, or if they're judging me, or, if they do type out that negative comment, once I realized that that has way more to do with them and their internal struggle and whatever they're going through than it does with me and what I'm going through, once I realized that, it became a whole new world for me. And I feel that too, honestly. Sometimes I'll be scrolling on TikTok and I'll, think of something mean, or I
Yeah.
mean, I never comment mean things, but
Yeah.
something will come up for me, and I have to think like, okay, why did I feel this way?
Mhm.
Why did I, think of this mean thing? What did this trigger inside of me? And usually it's, maybe I had a bad day. Maybe I got a bad review. Maybe I got a nasty email from a client, or I got a refund request or something
Mhm.
like that. I notice that when I'm having a bad day or something's going wrong in my business, that's when those,
Mhm.
hateful thoughts come up in my mind. So once I kind of had to realize that about myself and realize that, okay, whenever I judge someone unfairly or, you know, try to pass judgment, even in my own mind on something that someone else is doing, it's a direct reflection of how my own life is going. So
Mhm.
I, just assume that that's true for other people. So once I realized that, I stopped caring what people think. And again, the people that are leaving those negative comments or even thinking those negative comments, it's something that's going on in their life.